looking for a figure who will draw your country towards war.
Yes.
Arlen's is your man.
You're the most extraordinary man I ever met. Like that poor devil. He's riding the whirlwind.
Let's hope we're not. They hope to gain their freedom. They're going to get it, Mr. Bentley. I'm going to give it to them.
They think he's a kind of prophet. They do, or he does.
Who are you to know what can be done? Do you think I'm just anybody, Ali? Do you?
Percival, are you mad?
No. And if you don't mind, I'd rather not go mad.
Welcome to Movie Watch Live, where we're watching the second part of Lawrence of Arabia, probably one of the most influential movies ever. And joining me tonight are Tony of Ozrabia and Jeff, loaded for beer pots. Good evening.
No
Tony,
prisoners! No prisoners!
No prisoners! Good evening, Tony. First of all, you've had a week since we watched, we've all had a week since we watched the first part of this. Are you looking forward to watching the other half tonight?
I am. I didn't bother going ahead with it. I just thought, because I hadn't seen this movie in about 15 years, so I thought I'll just wait and watch it with everybody else.
Absolutely. And you've had an all right week? Anything good happen?
Oh, just work-related stuff. I sold a bunch of stuff, sent stuff
cool.
in the post, you know.
Always good to make a bit of money. And good evening, Jeff. I believe you've had a busy week as well. And you're looking forward to watching the second half of this movie?
Yeah.
The movie that we're watching tonight, the reason we're watching the second half is because it is quite a long movie. We wanted to give it full attention that it deserves so that we can look at both halves individually, because they are actually very different. First half of the movie is where Lawrence sets out on an adventure, but the second half of the movie is more about where he becomes like a messianic figure, and he goes through a journey of his own where it's from heaven to hell and then back again. So there again a very messianic message, like a redemption message. A lot of this movie is based upon the book he wrote, which is Seven Pillars of Wisdom, and there's a lot in it. It's a very deep movie. You could interpret it over and over again and still find new things every time you watch it. So without further ado, we will obviously first of all say thanks to everybody who's watching tonight. Welcome to everybody who's joined us tonight, and of course welcome to everyone we have in the chat tonight. So we do have in the chat Cosmetti and also Gabriel Gask, and we'll welcome you both tonight, and thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, no Ralph tonight. I think Ralph has either been left in the middle of the Texas desert by his 4x4, or he's got an incredibly long dog walk. Oh, the dog's led him on an incredibly long walk. But
all the way to Arabia.
Yeah, but we wish him all the best, whatever's happened. But he might still join us tonight, who knows. Before we go any further, just to quickly explain what this channel is. This is a commentary channel where we share our enjoyment of cinema. This, like I say, this movie here, 60 years old and still one of the most influential pieces of cinema ever written. And it will continue to be that because it has all of the qualities that make a movie endure throughout time. And it's not a movie that I don't think this movie could be made today. It's not the kind of movie that would be made in the current climate. And the reason we watch these movies is because these are the classics of cinema that have stood the test of time and are sheer treats to watch, and they have endured for the reason that they are of another quality. And so tonight we'll be watching this and commenting on it. We'll give you timestamps and describe what's going on, but we'll also share our knowledge and our reactions to the movie as we go. So if you're interested in that and you're happy to watch along with us, you would need to have your own copy. Now, I think I've already posted in the chat.
It is.
There is a free copy to watch, which is on YouTube. Now, this copy is a good quality, and it's there free to watch. It does have, and I think it does have Arabic subtitles, but that doesn't stop you enjoying the movie. So for anybody who says, well, I've joined here and this is clickbaity and you don't have a copy of the movie, well, there's a copy there. So if you want to watch that, feel free to watch that. So everybody who normally watches this show and joins in has their own copy of the movie, and so we synchronize these together. Now, the full length of the film is 3 hours 47 minutes. It's a fully restored version that we're watching, and we are going to start watching the second half. So we've already got our copies ready at 2 hours 23 minutes and 39 seconds. So that's the point where the second half of the movie starts after the intermission is finished, and that starts with the scene where the Prince Faisal is interviewed by the journalist, who is, I believe, Arthur Kennedy. Is the actor who plays a character called Jackson Bentley. Jackson Bentley is another amalgam figure who represents several different journalists of the day, who interviews Prince Faisal in the now captured port town of Aqaba, and that's how we begin the second half of the movie. So if you want to get your copy of the movie set to 2 hours 23 minutes and 39 seconds or thereabouts, you'll be close enough to follow where we are with our copies, and we're going to go from there. So we have as usual, a short video that we use to synchronize our copies of the movie, which has a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then when you see the flashy arrows, you press play on your copy of the movie, and then hopefully we'll all be able to synchronize together. I don't think there's going to be any bots this time, because
You say
we're
that.
too late for the bots, yeah. And I think that's like a little hourglass that. So Cosmetti's basically saying get on with the show. So let's get on with the show. So ready, gentlemen? Here we go.
3, 2, 1.
There we go. And I actually got it right this time. I'm just going to take out my copy here so I can see that while I can see the chat.
So that's what the best dressed journalist wears these days.
Yeah, this is Edwardian journalist. Sounds like a magazine, that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Edwardian journalist.
You're not Prince Fiver. What do you mean we all look the same?
Hey, buddy, you must be the head honcho around here. What are you trying to say?
Now I've got images of American Psycho with that business card. It's eggshell. Oh my God, it's got a watermark. So, Alec?
Yep.
No, I don't ever remember business cards being that important.
It's an Arabic, little Arabic sort of hut thing or building here. And Alec Guinness is there. I'm just so tempted to say, your father wanted to have it when you were old enough. So this conversation here between Bentley and Faisal it's a set piece to frame the second half of the movie and to explain where everybody is. So by this stage, Lawrence is out with a guerrilla campaign against the Turks, destroying their railway communication, attacking trains, supply trains, etc. And Prince Faisal has been occupying captured Aqaba, but is now going to go to Cairo at some time in the near future. Now, as I said before, it's not perfectly historically accurate at all. There are differences between this and the actual events that took place, but the general point of the movie is that it presents the character.
The intent is correct.
Yeah, the intent is to present the character of T. Lawrence. And what they're trying to say now is that he's already become a legend. And there's also Faisal is the guy who, at the end of the movie, arranges the inconvenient peace with the Western forces. And this American journalist represents something that hasn't changed in 100 years. I mean, this is the events that have taken place here over 100 years ago, and yet media is still used today for obvious propaganda reasons. So he's there as a propagandist, he's there to find someone who can encourage the Americans to join the First World War. There was absolutely no reason for the Americans to join the First World War other than it was beneficial for them because they'd grown to be a world power by this stage. And I think the First World War was the first war the Americans joined in on a world scale, because before that had been the Mexican War, hadn't it? And the Spanish-American War. So this was the first world stage war the Americans joined in on.
Bully.
I might be wrong. There we go. Because when he was saying, no, I was suggesting that you need an hourglass, Pete. I really do, to be honest. I need like a little crow to sit on my shoulder and peck us in the face, just to say, "Oi!" Actually, a speaking crow would be better. "Oi, mate! You're bloody late again!" And yeah, so I could do with one of those. Yeah, so the policy of the Turkish Ottoman Empire at this point was they took no prisoners. So if you were injured, this is why the ratio of Arabic soldiers, wounded soldiers, is quite low, and the ratio of dead soldiers is quite high, because it would kill their own soldiers, because the Turks would just torture them or leave them to die. And that's sort of mirrored at the end of the story, where when the Arabs take over Damascus, the Turkish hospital for Turkish wounded is just left for everybody to die. So it quickly descended into, and you can see this in this half of the movie, it starts out as a heroic adventure, but it quickly descends into just sheer barbarism on both sides.
Gosh, that's never happened before.
Yeah, that never happened.
And it never happened since.
Territorial war or civil war, etc. And this line here is fantastic. It encapsulates the whole thing perfectly. Where he's trying to say he's looking for a simple hero, and he wants to emphasize the more adventurous element of the war.
Hey, we all need another hero.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're looking for the wind beneath their wings.
Yeah. But so Faisal says straight away, you're looking for a figure who will draw your country towards war.
You reach out with your feelings, Lawrence.
I don't know whether this was, I mean, they must have used a full-scale train, because when the fighting starts...
They're right next to it.
Yeah.
There's the other like when you're saying, they won't make stuff like that anymore. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that stunt anymore.
Yeah.
Pew pew.
Pew 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 pew. So you can see the Arabs have been given Gatling guns anyway, or automatic guns like these, and but they haven't been given any artillery. So that was a specific thing that the British decided they wouldn't do. So he has to shoot a flare to get them to stop shooting.
Yeah, I think they stopped him.
Come on, police your brass.
And so the looting begins, gentlemen, as usual. So, there's not a great difference between war and theft, really. It's just killing and theft on a grander scale. But I like the touch that the black suit is everywhere over the sand, because obviously the coal is blown up everywhere. And then there's a guy just wandering around there. And then this ordinary fella, because this is just Turkish, probably businessmen or politicians or diplomats or whatever, who've been on the train. And just but he has the scene where Lawrence gets on top of the train carriages for the first time, and there's a surviving Turkish officer. I think is that a Luger he's got?
It's Mauser.
Mauser, there we go. Because the Mauser was the Mauser was the gun that was converted into Han Solo's, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which was another movie set in a desert planet. Connections wise, I was just thinking that
Mauser probably would have been better from when I heard of those Lugers. They were awful.
Yeah.
Stare him down.
Because he says brutal, and imagine modern day journos doing this. Yeah, they wouldn't. By the way, this Turkish officer is doing a totally disgusting blackface.
Yeah, that's why he gets killed.
He gets killed for blackface. Death. That's the punishment.
Either that or they're kicked off of Twitter.
Yeah. And then just the totally dispassionate way that the journalist says, never seen someone killed by a sword before. And of course, the Bedouins didn't appreciate their photograph being taken. I mean, company you keep. Yeah. I mean, they're absolutely correct by thinking that a journalist is a kind of thief, because that's exactly what they are. So Anthony Quinn plays Auda Abu Tai. Does a really good performance.
Anthony really gets into it.
Yeah. And here we go.
About half of the he took out half of the movie crew.
Yeah.
No.
And I like the way that Debeline even uses the shadow on the sand, and then you have him standing right in front of the sun, like eclipsing the sun. So there's a lot, and you see how he keeps him in exactly the same position here on the camera, and then you get this scene where he's walking on the top here from a different angle, and then the music changes tone. And what they tried to present in the movie was this split personality, that Lawrence was an ordinary person, but he was extraordinary, really. And he has, like, in a way, a split personality where 1 minute he adopts this persona of a hero, like a messianic figure, and then at sometimes he can't stand this mantle. He wants to get rid of it. But even that's, I suppose, a little bit Christ-like, because there was times when even Christ said, take this cup away from me. So it's an interesting study of people who are put in this position and what it does to you mentally, And this point that they're making now is that pretty soon the Arab army will retire for the rest of the year. And will he be left with anything to fight the Turks?
Whoa.
When he makes that reference to the golden bullet, he's really just sort of mocking himself and, the reputation, because he knows he's being built up into this huge figure that he isn't. And but at the same time, he was extraordinary. He did take risks, and he was a genius, definitely.
Hey, Mac, you gonna have a parliament, Mac?
I mean, there's so many different themes in this movie, and one of them is, like we said already, the intrigue and politics, where at the end of the movie you have the Anglo-French agreement to divide the whole region into partition it into regions or countries in a totally arbitrary way. Because I think it's Anthony Quinn's character who says, you know, he's heard of Habitat and Harith, but he has never heard of the word Arab. So it was just it was like it was imposed upon them, you know.
True. I think
in a really bad way. Instead of it being organically done, it was just sort of pushed on it. It was a bit like they did with Africa, really. I like his answer there. What do you like about the desert? It's clean.
Dusty, but clean.
Because Matty has put an arm of victory there, a muscly arm. And this basically shows that Anthony Quinn's character, he has no use for Western things. It has to be something he can use in the desert. And he does get what he wants. He gets some horses later on, some fine-looking horses. And here we are, a train full of horses. There's a fine-looking white horse right in the middle there. For some reason, I think I had like a false memory that Lawrence rode a white horse. And it just shows you how your brain fills in these gaps. And of course, that's actually Gandalf, isn't it? Somebody who rides a white horse dressed in white. But it's strange how your brain makes stuff up about a movie that you haven't seen in 10 or 15 years. But this is the last big raid before the Arab army retires. And it's obviously cavalry horses for the Turkish army that they raid and take. Do you know that this movie was actually banned in most Arab countries? Because whoever was ruling the Arab countries at the time said that it misrepresented Arab historical figures. However, Omar Sharif arranged a viewing with President Gamal Abdel Nasser, so President Nasser of Egypt, to show him that there was nothing wrong with the way they were portrayed. And the president of Egypt loved the movie so much, he allowed it to be released in Egypt, and it became a massive hit, which was great for Omar because he was Egyptian, and that did his career a world of good. This movie really helped to launch not just Peter O'Toole's career, but Omar's career as well. And just get rid of that there. So this scene where they've released all the horses, and tremendous scene. I mean, it must have took a lot of hard work to do all of this, but it just proves the point that it was an expensive thing to fight a war, and the people who were fighting the war wanted something in return for it. So these tribes wanted something in return for their effort. So there were some talking about the cost of the movie, because it did cost a lot of money to make the thing. Sam Spiegel wanted David Lean to consider some benefits of shooting in Southern California. instead of places like Israel. David Lean, though, was determined to film a story where it actually happened in the Middle East. But obviously, an obvious problem for Sam Spiegel was the fact that being Jewish and the political situation in the Middle East at the time.
Yeah, that would have been caused some problems.
He was seriously worried that a Jewish producer wouldn't even be allowed into Jordan at the time, and it was Anthony Nutting, a British advisor on the production of the movie, who had also been a Minister of State for Foreign Affairs during the Suez Crisis, that got the problem solved. He got Spiegel a special visa, and the visa had his religion as Anglican. So when he basically he protested about it, this British politician just said, "Just be quiet. Here's your bloody visa. Just take it and use it." Because, I mean, at the time, that solved the problem. Because obviously it was a very sensitive time in the 60s in the Middle East. The scene here is where the surviving brother, the two young lads, obviously you've seen one of them die in the quicksands, and this scene, he has to handle these because these are just the charges for the explosives, and they have like a micro charge which sets the main charges off, and it's, I don't know what the strength or the powder strength of the detonator is, but
I just realized they've been muted.
I wondered what had happened, Tony.
Sorry. Yeah.
I just thought you had another customer.
No.
Cosmetti says, "There you go, Pete. He's got you a clock." Oh, never mind. Sorry, Cosmetti. I've only just seen that comment now. Yeah, it's a broken clock. That's actually my clock, then, Cosmetti. That's the one that's on my mantelpiece right now. That explains everything. Don't blow up the horses. No, they don't. I've noticed they conveniently, no one shot the horses, but sadly now, yeah, Arabic insults are the very best. Sadly now, this is the other young guy who's now been hurt by the detonator charge going off inside his clothes.
Right. Yeah.
It's injured him potentially. The upsetting thing here, the tragedy is that if he had surgery or he had any form of medical attention, he might survive, but they can't really move him. And if they take him alive, they'll torture him and kill him. So again, Lawrence has to execute someone because it's better than what the Turks would do to him. So he's having to do this. And it's just another tragedy. It shows the human. I think the reason is it shows the cost.
Mm.
And it was such a barbaric war where they had to do this. They had to resort to these measures. And it just shows how, I think, each step in the way, I think T. Lawrence was just losing his soul step by step. So it's getting onto the winter now, and the British are discussing what's happened to the Arabic army, because basically the Arabic army has dissipated. They don't want to fight in the colder months, and they've got what they need for now. And so Lawrence is still trying to fight with 50 men and keep the war going, but there's just not the support there. Apparently, T. Lawrence's brother, A.W. Lawrence, wasn't keen on this movie's representation of him. So he didn't allow the use of his siblings' autobiography title, The Seven Pillars of Wisdom. They were going to call, so I think they must have been wanting to call the movie Seven Pillars of Wisdom before they changed it to Lawrence of Arabia. This is where they talk about the fact that the Arabs are already calling him a type of prophet. The Moroccan army were used as extras without pay, which was understandably resented during their off hours. They actually took pot shots at the cast and crew.
Oh, wow.
Including Sir David Lean. And the rest of them deserted between takes and never came back. Because, like, they just weren't getting paid. They were obliged to do it, apparently, but didn't get paid.
That's what I was like when I was muted. Saying that, yeah, they wouldn't have been able to pull this off in California because the topography is not even close.
No.
Yeah.
It would have been Northern California would have been a disaster. And what's the point of filming the part of one of the huge strengths of this movie is the cinematic, the fact that the landscape is the main character really, apart from T. Lawrence. It's the backdrop of the landscape. So have you noticed how he's already mentioned, do you think I'm just an ordinary man? Who and already saying to Ali that, who do you think I am? And do you think I can't do this? And he's mentioned walking on water. So there's a constant stream of like Messianic references. And you could imagine that this is like Christ with his apostles in a way, that he has a small group of followers. I suppose that they are definitely a little bit like the what was the period of Israel where they were in rebellion against Greek rule? The Maccabees, I think it was. So there's one of the best actors ever.
It was the Maccabean. It was the Maccabean Rebellion.
Yeah, that's it, the Maccabean Rebellion, because in a way it's sort of reminiscent of that, where you've got a small group of dedicated fighters who were rebelling against oppressive rule. And I thought it was done for here, really, when they caught him, because obviously he's fair-skinned and blue-eyed. And Imshi, yalla. And then I learned a whole area of history I didn't know anything about. When he gets questioned, there was a whole people displaced by the Russians who were fair-skinned, blue-eyed, and who went to live in Arabic countries. Didn't know anything about that. And they still exist today in like a diaspora. And they've got like red hair, blonde hair. It's very interesting. So there's a lot more to this world than, would first seem. But Jose Ferrer as the Turkish Bey is probably one of the greatest actors who ever lived. Peter O'Toole said that he learned more from the few moments he spent on set with Jose Ferrer than he had done previously in his entire acting career previously. So Jose Ferrer, incredible actor.
And the Emperor of the Known Universe.
Yeah, I mean, again, another...
Shaddam the Fourth.
Yeah, and again, another direct connection to Dune. And I think that was deliberately done when they made Dune, because of the fact that there's a reference to... It was based upon Lawrence of Arabia. There was a few other references as well. Do you know that Peter O'Toole's first wife... Does anybody know who Peter O'Toole's first wife was?
Dune?
Huh?
Lorna Doone?
No. She was a Welsh actress who learnt English from listening to the BBC World Service. A very talented woman, but a bit of a handful, shall we say, in regards to their relationship wasn't very, very pleasant. So her name was Sian Phillips, and she played the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, the Mother Superior.
Dune. So there's multiple connections between.
You mustn't speak.
Yeah, fear is the mind killer. So it's incredible the amount of connections between this movie and the 1984 film version of Dune, which personally I think that's my favorite. Anyway.
I like it. I really like
version of the movie. I think the aesthetic is just brilliant.
Atomics.
Yeah. So yet another connection there with that. So he's been captured by the Turkish. This is when he ends up being tortured as well. Now he, in his book, he talks about never being the same after this happened, and of course we get to see a side of the Turkish Bay that obviously T. Lawrence does not like at all. There's the bullet wound that he got earlier in the train raid. And it's the subtlety in the way that he acts that presents such a threatening menace, that doesn't have to do much to and then obviously what he's starting to do now is extremely disturbing for Peter O'Toole's eyes just go, uh-oh. He needs him right in the jobblies. And I just like the way that Jose Ferrer waddles off to the room at the top there in obvious discomfort because his sweetmeats have been smashed a bit.
He needs to get on the spice.
Yeah. And I like the way that this is presented. So he's walking directly backwards in the center line as they put the bench in the same parallel line. And then Peter O'Toole's placed on the top of there to be tortured. So there's always an aesthetic. And the sickest thing about this is that the Turkish Bay leaves the door open so you can watch the torture take place. Cosmetti says Phillips is a fabulous actress and gorgeous. She was Olivia in I Claude. Yes, she was Olivia, and she also starred with. She was incredible. She was an incredible actress. She starred with Peter O'Toole in A Lion in Winter, where she played. I think it was Thomas. It was Richard Burton's character anyway. And played his wife. But it was interesting because obviously she was actually Peter O'Toole's wife at the time. And that was the... So Peter O'Toole was Henry II. And... No, sorry, not Lion in Winter. I'm getting it wrong here. It was the other film he did at the same time, which was Richard Burton. It was Beckett in 1964. That was the movie Beckett, and Sian, his real-life wife, played Richard Burton's wife in the movie. Thompson Beckett's wife. And yeah, incredible actress. But it was not a happy marriage.
Well, it happens. Especially when you're a freedom fighter in the Middle East.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of rumors at the time as well, and a lot of misinformation that, Peter O'Toole was a terrible husband and he was the cause of all the problems. And
of course,
and it wasn't really that. It was just a really bad marriage where it was bad both sides. But yeah, I mean, another connection to that other movie. So here's the net result of whatever did happen to T. Lawrence in this incident. We don't know really. Some people dispute that actually took place altogether. But after the event, anyway, Ali leads him back to their mountaintop recluse hideout. So we're at 2 hours 59 minutes. And so this is the lowest point. This is like the depths of degradation that the character goes through, that the real life person went through. And like the death and resurrection theme, it's from this that he's resurrected, but he's not resurrected as necessarily a better person. He becomes more cynical in a way and more mistrusting of everyone. So this is a conversation where he admits that there's no way to go any further forward, and he decides to go back to British headquarters. He's basically at this point given up because the scouting trip to that town went horribly wrong. There's no army really left there, and this is where Ali is really upset because he's convinced T. Lawrence has convinced him to be very passionate about this cause, but now T. Lawrence himself has given up on it. This was David Lean's and Omar Sharif's first movie together as well. Another theme in this movie is fate and creating your own fate or creating your own destiny. Because it's interesting because as a person, Peter O'Toole certainly believed that there was a lot of destiny in his own life. So things just fell into place for him as an actor. But then again, it could just be the fact that he was such a brilliant actor that his talent made a way for him, Because he says, never marry a man who thinks he's prettier than you. Well, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think it was Noel Coward said after he saw the movie, if Peter O'Toole had been any prettier, they would have had to call it Florence of Arabia.
I remember seeing, was it The Last Emperor? And
Yeah.
he was the tutor in that. Every
Yes.
time he speaks, I can't not hear that.
Well, he's in Ratatouille as well, isn't he? He plays
Yes.
the food critic.
Food critic.
And what's the quote he says? I don't like it, I love it. Or something. If I don't love it, I don't eat it, or something. I can't remember.
But I was going to make a really, really terrible comment before when he said everything just fell into place for him, and I was like, "How does that explain Supergirl?"
Yeah, true. There is an exception.
There is the occasional stumble.
There's always an exception.
I mean, he's good in it. Don't get me wrong; he's great, but it's just like,
yeah. So in the movie here, he's back at British headquarters, but I mean, his back is still bleeding. I don't know whether it would still be bleeding from that torture, but nevertheless, it's to carry
Probably
across
moving
the
around too much.
yeah. It's just to carry the effect that he's obviously not a normal person. He's an eccentric, but socially awkward. That's what they, because he has this sort of dual personality. He finds it easier to sort of fit into this role than be himself. Jolly good. A squash
Built a
court.
squash
Oh,
court.
squash.
Pip, pip. What?
Like a gentleman's game.
I think the most famous movie I ever saw Claude Rains in, and he's not even French, by the way, was when he played the French captain Renault in Casablanca.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's probably the most famous thing I saw him in, but he's such a good actor.
Always liked him in The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that Jennifer Lawrence paved the way for him. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you know that Lawrence of Arabia, not Jennifer Lawrence of Arabia, I should say, is one of the most famous movies, favorite movies of directors, not just Steven Spielberg, but also Christopher Nolan as well. It's in that top 10. No surprise, really. And here he is, come to see Allenby, but Prince Faisal's there already. And this is where we learn for the first time about the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which in the movie, T. Lawrence says he didn't know anything about. And they sort of tar him with the same brush because Claude Rains' character says, you sort of knew a half truth, which is the same as a half lie. So you're tarred with the same brush as all of us, really. You were part of the whole conspiracy, really. And that was the intention all the time, that they were using the Arabs to help clear out the Turks. And once the Turks were gone, the British and French would divide the Middle East between themselves. So, because Melly says this building is amazing. It is. I think it's the. I think it's in Spain. This one. It's yeah, I think it's in Spain. In Seville.
Sorry, I was muted again. It's interesting, his posture. Like he does look like he's carrying himself like his back is injured. Like I don't know if he's been always hunched over. I haven't really paying that much attention, but just now like, I'm just like it looks like it's there.
Yeah, he's always looking awkward when he's back in this role because his imagination, and every time he becomes imaginative and every time he starts to believe in himself as this larger than life legend is when something takes over and he becomes standing straight and everything. But at other times he's like this. He just wants to go away and be ignored and have a quiet life. And this is where he says that he wants to leave the army because he doesn't want to go mad. So this is this theme of like Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now, where the horror of war is making him go insane. He's already had to execute 3 or 4 people. I don't want to be part of your big push.
You can't make me, Reginald. You can't make me.
And I mean, it has to be argued that the First World War generals were the most potty people in the world. I mean,
I know.
that whole episode of Blackadder goes forth
Oh
where,
yeah.
you know, you stick 2 pencils up your nose and say, "Oh, wibble." And
Well, just the sheer amount of death in World War One
Yeah.
was,
it was absolutely shocking.
hey, we lost thousands of people on this attack. Oh, well, we need to do another one.
And they were just the expendability of people. It was just an
Yep.
unreal level of callousness. So obviously he's a valuable, enigmatic character and obviously highly connected, very intelligent. He's already the person they can use to direct Arab military action. He
With
is a
that hat
double-edged
on-
sword, as they say later in the movie, because as a person he wants Arab independence, so he's split in his loyalties, but the British can't do without him because of his position with the Arabs. They have to use him to keep the Arabs where they want them to be.
With that hat on, the reporter looks like Kolchak, the Night Stalker.
Vincenzo!
Yeah, remember, goodness me, those movies. They were the best B movies ever, them, though. By the way, do you like Allenby's +4s there? Jolly good. The huge, wide, pleated trousers. And here we go. It's obviously calls him an extraordinary man. Not many people have a destiny. So I'm not sure whether the idea here is to appeal to his ego or his genius, because the man was a genius. Offers him money. It's in the American Film Institute's list of top 100 greatest American movies ever.
Where on the list is it?
I'm not sure. I think
I
it
mean,
has
does
gone
that
up and
matter,
down
or-
during the years, but
So I'd have to imagine it's pretty high.
yeah.
That was back in
So-
the days when you were tortured. You bore the wounds. You didn't
Walked it
whine
off.
about it.
Well, it's interesting you said that because, later on when he says the line "no prisoners, no prisoners," that wouldn't be allowed now because of the Geneva Convention. But I think the Geneva Conventions were in the 20s after. So I think it was the First World War that sort of defined the
Yeah.
Geneva Conventions because of we're talking about the atrocities of the First World War. I think it was that led to the Geneva Conventions, or at least the second or third one. I'm not sure.
The beginning of them, yeah.
I love this scene here. You can see how influential this has been for Indiana Jones. Just the period details and the authenticity, but just that element of adventure and everything, and beautiful set piece. So this is "Have you met Major Lawrence since he's come back?" says Bentley, and what the director's trying to show you is that Ali's waiting to see him again, but he's changed. He's a different man. He's not a better person. He's just more cynical now. He started to realize that a lot of what's going on is political power play, and he's not so much as an idealist as he was. He's more, I think, more ruthless now.
Actually, first Geneva Convention was 49.
Was it?
Yeah. So it was after World War II. Yeah, I would have thought it would have been after one, but yeah.
It must have been one before the Second World War, because there's loads of Second World
hang
War
on.
movies
It
where
was
they
called
quote
something
the Geneva
else.
Convention.
It was
I think it
called
was
something
more
else.
than one. So here he comes with a bunch of mercenaries. These are all hired killers, like the worst. What is it? A den of scam and villainy. This is Mos Eisley's worst bounty hunters.
Wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Yep. The trek in the mountains was filmed in Spain's Sierra Nevadas. So they did film some scenes in Spain, apart from Seville, obviously, which was the buildings. Damascus. This guy with the
I
the
think I'm
loads
thinking of the
teeth.
Treaty of Versailles.
It's like the craziest, absolute craziest MF in the whole.
The Treaty of Versailles
Army.
was in the First World War.
And yeah, it was 1919.
I don't want ordinary men.
So here we go on the road to Damascus.
Damascus Steel.
Damascus. Dee-da-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da.
I love that shot of the horses right up on that ridge, right above them.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Just great. Just like levels and levels and levels of soldiers and that.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
I had an eye for it back then.
And so here we are, totally different scene. And now something completely different. British military here.
And they're trying to figure out whether they're going to have roast beef or chicken tonight.
Spam.
Delicious spam.
And so this is the splendid Philip. And so they're reviewing where all the different units are. And then finally they talk about the Arab army. This Arab army on the right side. What's it consist of? Irregular cavalry, 2000.
If I could do that, I would.
Pound them, Charlie.
They're not going to listen to that guy. He doesn't have a stash.
Yeah.
Come back with facial hair.
Yeah, come back when you've grown some sort of moustache.
How can you trust a man without a mustache?
Yeah.
He has no power.
On their route up there, obviously even Ali's character is saying God help them, even though they're Turks, but because of the pounding of the artillery, because people hadn't seen warfare like this, especially not the Arabic people hadn't seen warfare like this.
Royce.
And here's the British on their push to Damascus.
Turn on the air conditioning.
Yes. Anything
Would
on the
you roll
radio?
down the window. I'd like a little bit of breeze in the cab.
Cocky?
Cocky.
More than cocky, sir. He's got the bit between his teeth, all right. Has he got the cocky between his? No, he hasn't got that between his teeth, sir. But yeah, he's definitely determined to get there. The Turkish column in front of the Arabic army. This is the next scene where the two meet. The Turkish army was raiding town, so this Jordanian town here.
Everybody.
Syrian, won't it? No, it'll be Jordan. Sorry, what am I talking about? Has suffered the wrath of the Turkish column, and this terrible scene here of rape and murder. And this is what causes what later happens. And of course, it's about the whole idea of how warfare just descends into more and more atrocity on both sides. Because you get atrocities, then you get revenge killing for that.
The thing is that a lot of tribal warfare is just like that. I mean, that's the way
Yeah.
it was in North America during, the colonial days.
Mm.
And both sides did it, and it was not pleasant. And then the colonists started doing it.
Yeah.
It's like you can't, you
It
don't.
escalates.
War is not civil. It's
No.
bloody, brutal, and vicious.
Anything but, yeah, exactly. Starts off with
A
the best.
civil
Well,
war.
the some wars started off with the best intentions that to be over quickly, but that never happens. So, and where this guy with all the teeth says, "No prisoners."
No prisoners.
And Ali's trying to remind him, "Come on, don't do this. We need to get Damascus. Don't do this. Just go around them."
Just the emotion in his face is brilliant.
I know he's already going, and he's going, "No prisoners." He's just like, "No prisoners." And so he's got like the good angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, literally,
Yeah.
But obviously, it's this guy's village, so that's why he's had enough.
He might be able to take them all.
I think he's got a good chance.
Yeah. Surprise is on his side. Oh, not now.
Didn't last long.
Audacity.
There's blood.
Surprise!
In the
Oh,
there we go. No prisoners.
God.
I know. He knows it's going to be horrible. So it's really like there's no way out of it. It's like fated that they'll fight.
Any word is through.
And they're actually surrendering. And this is where he's laughing because it's like insane. The whole thing is insane. That even though they're surrendering, they're gonna cut the whole lot of them down.
Oh. Well, your artillery.
Yep. That's it. I think they could have captured that stuff, but I think these were real soldiers. I think these must have been the Moroccan extras. The horseback scenes have done really well. I'm not sure how they achieved them. I think they had booms on trucks. So like Anthony Quinn's like sitting on he's sitting on a seat on a truck with a camera mounted further forward. So
hey, Gabriel's back.
And of course at this point it's just carnage. And T-Louse is just randomly shooting people, and Ali's just giving up because there's no need to kill anybody now. They're routing and surrendering, but he's just got someone in the head.
Except that guy, he's dead.
This is like the whole idea. I mean, he's regarded as a hero, but at this point, he's just gone completely insane. Yeah, I believe Cosmetic was talking about the guy from earlier. He was nuts. Like Gabrielle says, I've escaped the shifting sands. That is my place of work. I've completely forgotten about these flipping gifts that I spent ages getting earlier. So I'll just quickly go through them. He enjoyed it. He did. Kaboom. Completely forgot about putting those GIFs on. All the best played plans of mice and men. There, so he's again, that mirrors back to earlier in the film where he looks in the reflection of the dagger when he first took on the persona of the princely clothes that he's wearing, the robes. So it's a callback to earlier. And there's the utter devastation. I mean, I don't know whether it was anywhere near on the scale. I don't think it was anywhere near on the scale of the Somme, but no prisoners. So that's the scene we've just seen there. And this is where Bentley catches up with them to take a photograph, and even Bentley realizes how things. And I love the dark light on this, because it's like as if it's the underworld.
Yeah.
And lighting's used constantly throughout this movie to portray a supernatural aspect. And Bentley gets off his camel and just says, "Jesus wept."
Jesus wept.
And this line here where he says, "Here, I'll take your bloody picture for the bloody newspapers." And because this is the thing that sells papers. This and then Ali's character making that point there that how has this happened, and
I'll take your picture, Mac.
yeah, for the rotten bloody newspapers. And the flash of the camera in the darkness of this landscape is deliberately done. I believe it's symbolic of the fact that it's to show you that the newspapers put this gloss of angelic light over the darkness of the situation. So literally the fakeness of the newspapers have illuminated Lawrence in the photograph just taken there, and it's fake, because they've illuminated what is really the darkness of violence and like a hellish scene, really. So we know that the media lies and portrays things differently. Well, thank you very much, Gabrielle. Very nice gifts. And they should have been playing since the start of the show. But again, it's just like, I need a producer. That's what I need. A producer who'll work for nothing. Maybe I can find someone in the Moroccan army who'll work for nothing. So now we're in Damascus. Timestamp, we're at 3 hours 26 minutes. By the way, that officer that I was talking about earlier, the reference to Blackadder, Darling is the officer. It's Tracy in this. Give me a copy, Tracy. It's his secretary, the officer who's the general secretary is called Tracy. So in this adaptation of the story, the Arabs have got to Damascus first, and they already control the city. I don't believe that's exactly how it happened historically. Technical units particularly, and also they refrain from allowing the medical units to be part of what's going on as well. So it's I don't know whether that happened in reality, but here we have the chaos of the Arabic alliance in what seems to be the Parliament room or Senate, whichever. And already you have disagreements between the tribes, the Hawitat and the Harith.
I guess a pistol could be used as a
A pistol butt's a
gavel.
perfectly good gavel.
Just be glad it's not an automatic weapon.
As long as there's
Yeah.
no bullet in the chamber, that would go off. This is where T. Lawrence starts to lose hope in the whole thing. The last piece of like idealism he had, because if the Arabs won't work with each other and if they're divided like this because of blood feuds and other things, it's inevitable that the British are going to take over, which is what happens. Because the other point that they make is that these are desert tribes, and do they have any engineers? They have, because they're not bothered that the phones aren't working. They're not bothered that the waterworks aren't working or electricity. But in the movie, they show that the Arabs leave the city quite early and leave it to the Allies. That's not really what happened historically. By the way, there are some outtakes for this movie. Peter O'Toole got the giggles on a few occasions. The scene where he's in the tent at the start of the movie with Bentley and Alec Guinness as Faisal, they had to film, and Omar Sharif, they had to film that scene independently, each actor on their own, because Omar Sharif and Peter O'Toole and Alec Guinness couldn't stop making each other laugh all the time. So we need to find the outtakes of it though. So can you see the symbolism there with all the petitions? It's a little bit like they are sabers, like swords. He's having to fight through a crowd of them. So what they're saying is the bureaucracy is another war, and it's another form of chaos, just like the massacre they've just been through. Gabriel Kesk says there's something about an idealist losing hope that's heartbreaking. I absolutely agree, and I think that's the main point of the second half of the movie, that T. Lawrence starts to realize that it was never the intention of the Allies to allow the Arabs to have their own self-rule, and Cosmetti says, I agree. What need of telephones? that was the comment I was laughing at. I agree. What need of telephones? Yes, well, Cosmetti definitely agrees with get rid of them, especially the mobile ones. Tough place to be an idealist. It's been total chaos forever. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Middle East is just like an absolute furnace. Not just the weather, but I mean, if politically and ideologically a furnace, isn't it? It's just been the center of so much warfare and contention, hasn't it?
Zorba's mad at him.
Yeah. So towards the end of the movie now, we're at 3 hours 32, and Anthony Quinn's character basically trying to convince Lawrence to leave and come with him back to the desert. And that's a reference called back to the first part of the movie where he talks to Prince Faisal. Are you a desert-loving Englishman? And this is where he says, I pray I may never see the desert again, because he's realized that, the intention was to bring them out of the desert and bring them to a point where they weren't struggling to survive. But
the way things are, it probably will not happen. Well, I mean, God does kind of happen, but
because it's like from both sides, the Arabs can't get on with each other and can't agree on anything, and that makes them prone to being ruled by foreign powers. So on the other side, you've got the Anglo-French domination of the region, and absolutely no place for an idealist. And then the relationship between these two characters here, Ali's brokenhearted. And there's a quote that he says in just a moment. And there's several people, right at the end of the movie, T. Lawrence thinks he sees Ali later on in the movie, and it's not him. So this line here, he is your friend. I fear him. Why do you weep? I fear him who love him. How must he fear himself who hates himself? And already the bond between these tribes to achieve what they wanted to achieve, it's all fallen apart now.
Yep.
And you see how Ali's character deliberately disappears into the darkness. and Anthony Quinn's character just looks up at the moon and stretches, because he represents the desert. He's just like unchanging. He doesn't care.
Yep.
He's always going to survive no matter what. But he's, he is essentially the desert. And this last section here is where, despite everything else that's happened, now he has to go to the Turkish hospital to see that it's been left completely. And this is the last thing that breaks him, because he doesn't appreciate this and what's happened to them, even though the Turks have been cruel and barbaric themselves. Leaving him in this state is obviously not right. And then he's mistaken for an Arab when there's a deliberate... David Lean wanted to show, deliberately show a British officer's hypocrisy. And he has a scene right at the end of the movie where he sees the same officer who, in this scene, turns up and punches him in the face because he thinks he's an Arab, and later on congratulates him because he knows that it's Lawrence. But it's the hypocrisy of the whole thing. And when the British military turn up and say this is outrageous, it's not so much of any sense of idealism or Hippocratic oath. It's really just this military pride. Really, they're just ashamed because they don't want their military they don't want their reputation.
The reputation sullied.
Yeah,
exactly. It's just purely about their reputation being sullied. And it's this character here. And he's laughing because at the same time, it has to remember that the Turks were barbaric, and the British code of, look after your enemy. Well, what about looking after your own army first?
Yeah.
And here we are at the very end, and this is the line I think Prince Faisal speaks about this in just a moment, where let's get together and carve things up, and it's the cynicism of all of this. T. Lawrence leaves the room, and also as well as that, Colonel Brighton leaves the room as well because he's disgusted as well. And you can see that now T. Lawrence is in the shadows in the room there, deliberately casting a shadow because he's no longer relevant. So now that the British have got what they wanted, and also Prince Faisal's got what he wanted, off you go. And he's just disposed of, and they get him out of there as quickly as possible because they don't want him inspiring any Arabic revolt. And Prince Faisal's happy to get rid of him as well. He's even more dispassionate than the others. And it was that line there, the vices of peace are the vices of old men. So this is no longer a place for idealism. It's basically a place for us to now carve everything up. And it's like as if he never existed. In 2008, ranked number 1 on the American Film Institute's list of the 10 greatest films in the genre, in the epic genre. This movie. And so here we go with the really cynical negotiations where people compromise and compromise. There's the British officer again, who, it's Lawrence, isn't it? And then Lawrence says, haven't I met you before? I don't think so. Yeah, so
illusory.
This is where Prince Faisal obviously draws attention to the reputation of Lawrence. So he's basically saying, get him out of the country as quickly as possible so he doesn't cause any trouble for either you or me. The reason it moved to Spain was because Sam Spiegel ran out of money.
Huh.
So they had started filming in the Middle East.
Why couldn't he do a Kickstarter?
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Because it still wouldn't get made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe put up a PayPal.
It would never have come out if you relied on crowdfunding.
I have never understood the British military salute.
It's palm facing outwards.
Yeah. I don't get it. Of course, I've only seen the American salute where it's like to the...
Well, the American salute is like horizontal straight on, isn't it? That's like that.
It's like a karate
The
chop.
idea, it's the same as when you put your hand out to somebody, you're showing an open hand at the same time, meaning that you've got nothing in your hand. So it does come from, the origin comes from, I believe, knights raising their visor in the middle of the battle to say, hi, I'm on your side. So yeah, I think the scene was in Seville as well, and the anguish on the officer's face there because he's missed catching up with him. And this is the very final scene of the movie, gentlemen. where Lawrence is being taken away. And this is where he briefly thinks the Bedouin here, one of them might be somebody he knows, it might be Ali. And he looks, and of course it's not. And so he just sits back down in the seat. And his allegiance is still strange because he wants to leave the desert, but
He doesn't.
he doesn't. And then a motorbike goes by, and this is directly links it to the beginning of the movie because he starts getting into motorbikes and as a means of a bit of excitement, and links directly to his death, which was the tragic motorcycle accident. And there it fades away just like that, unceremoniously, as he's shuttled out of the region. No longer needed. So a very, very poignant ending. Well, there we go. I mean, that was the end of the second half of probably one of the greatest movies ever made. And I believe the first half of the movie concentrates more on the landscape, and the second half is a completely different beast. It's more about the
horrors
barbarity
of
and about the politics. What do you think, gentlemen?
Yeah, I think that that's where it the first part sort of romanticizes things, and then the second part completely shatters that.
Yeah, it's romance versus pragmatism.
Yeah. And so, any other thoughts in regards to? There's a clear change across the movie, across both halves of the movie. Cosmetti and Gabriel Gaskup said a few things in the chat there. Cosmetti says, it took place by an idealist. Gabriel says, tragic, and it was a tragic. I mean, he went on to, as a person, he went on to still be part of the military, and he did achieve quite a lot afterwards in various roles, but it was nothing like what he did as a young man, and it was never what he did in the Middle East. And unfortunately, it was only 2 months after he left the military that he died in the motorcycle accident at the age, I think it was the age of 46. But it was Winston Churchill who was one of the people who commented that very few people that achieved what he had achieved at that age.
Yep.
And of course, he was very highly connected. But overall, I mean, if we talk about the second half of the movie, it shows just how active the Arabs were in disrupting the Turks, but it really gets into the nitty-gritty of the politics of what was going on the world scale. So you've got the setting as the Middle East, but the Middle East in the context of a world war where the fate of the Middle East was being decided in Europe, and despite what the Arabs were being told, the net result was that you had the Sykes-Picot Accord. So basically, it was irrelevant in a way what they were doing, but they were enabling their own, just the next empire. So the Ottomans were done away with, just to be replaced by the French, in regards to Syria, at least, because I think it was I'm not too well versed on Jordan and Syrian history, but I know that I think it was Syria that was the French moved in on, or it might have been Jordan, I'm not sure, but certainly in a short space of time. The end of the movie ends where Prince Faisal's in control, but I believe in a few short years the French came in and took over. I know that the British had Palestine, which later became Israel. We were basically there as a police force. But I think the French had Syria and Jordan. I'll have to check, but it wasn't a good time, obviously. Cosmetti says he looks broken, and yeah, he was, absolutely. I think the reason he wrote the book, 7 Pillars of Wisdom, was because that experience was probably the most powerful thing he'd ever gone through in his life, and he never, nothing like that ever happened again. And he asked to, he actually wanted to be an unknown because he was so well known in the media in Britain and in America and Europe, everywhere. He wanted to go by false names, so he didn't want to be known for who he actually was. I think there was a story about him trying to enlist somewhere, and they found out who he was, so he had to move somewhere else. But it was that kind of celebrity factor that was actually a disadvantage. He didn't want people to know. He wanted to lead a quiet life. And Gabrielle says it's really an excellent juxtaposition. Yeah, I mean, the more you watch the movie, the more you see the difference between the two halves of the movie. It is, in a sense, like two different movies in a way. Because when he says the Arabs were invaders too in Syria. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you look into Syrian history, then you'll see that Syrian history, it predates Arabic people. It predates all of that. Very interesting history. And she also says the French occupied Lebanon, which was carved off from Syria. Yeah, so there's another point that the Lebanon actually was cut away from Syria. It was originally part of Syria. So there's a lot going on there. And also, till this day, there is still some form of conflict. Yeah, and you could argue as well that the way that everything was divided up arbitrarily has contributed to all of that conflict. And that's happened so many times, hasn't it? Where the conflict has been created by exalting one group of people over another, and that's not unique to the Middle East. Because when he says constant occupations and civil wars and tribal warfare from the time of this movie right up through to her time, so
Yep,
it was anything but the beginning of stability for the Middle East. Really, it was in some respects the beginning of a long period of instability. The Ottomans were brutal, but when you do away with an empire, you're going to get instability in the wake of it. And before she says, and finally she says, the events of this movie and the way they carved it all up caused chaos that never ended. Yeah, and we're still seeing it today. Sorry, go ahead, Tony. You were going to say something?
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, power vacuums when come in when empires fall. It's like, yeah,
give it back to the Mongols.
Yeah.
Because Gabrielle says Cosmetti is full of knowledge. Cosmetti is wise,
and she's a bot crusher.
Yes, she is. Because we actually had some tonight, even though
we did, and she nailed
messed up the start of the show.
Hey, they'll crush your bots.
I don't know about Wisdom. I lived there, so yeah. So Cosmetti's lived there for a time, so first-hand experience. So she was actually born in Damascus. I mean, there were scenes at the end of the movie that wasn't Damascus, that was Seville, I believe. It's a shame they couldn't really film in Damascus, but
just close to Damascus.
Yeah, but nevertheless, as Cosmetti pointed out, the buildings, the Spanish buildings, are quite beautiful, and
let's just say it's closer to Damascus than California is.
Yeah,
that's true. It's still a lot better than if they'd filmed in California.
I'm out of money, but we need a place to shoot. Where can we go? Can I go to? Can I go to Lebanon? Can I go to Jordan?
We can just do it on the back lot.
Yeah. How about Seville?
Yeah.
Seville?
Yeah. Let's just use some polystyrene rocks and get a couple of... that's what they did with Star Trek, didn't they? The early Star Trek was all filmed on the back of a lot somewhere. Yeah, the Gorn.
Yeah.
But... after 6 months filming this, is an interesting fact here. Peter O'Toole was allowed to return to Britain for a week's rest following injuries from the shooting of the movie. He was out of the hospital. He went on a bender and was
Shock
arrested
horror.
for drunk driving, jailed and fined 75 quid. Disqualified for a year. Producer Sam Spiegel reprimanded him and said, "You're not supposed to get up to that kind of caper on a film like this." So he got told off for getting drunk.
I said, that's all Richard Harris's fault.
It would have been. After 3 months of shooting in the Seville area, the company moved again 350 miles southeast to the port city of Almeria. And the area comes close to desert terrain and looks more like the Middle East than any other part of Europe, apparently. A special train carried them overnight from Seville. Another train carried the trailers in which they had to live. Which they had lived in Jordan. A 48 truck convoy brought the props, costumes, and tech equipment to Almeria. So basically in the desert, when we're shooting in the desert, they'd lived inside these trucks because obviously there's nothing else out there. Wadi Rum, the valley in Jordan where some of the filming took place, is so bleak and barren, it's frequently used as a background for science fiction movies, especially those set on Mars. There you go. That's exactly what I said. We watched the first half of this. I said, that looks like the surface of Mars. Literally. I mean, it really did. Matt Damon. I know.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. Gabriel says, that's awesome. Such a rich history, because he says, my grandfather's tale about being a kid when they carved off Lebanon from Syria and cut their villages from each other within walking distance. A bit like the Berlin Wall going up, isn't it?
Yeah.
When they did that, just arbitrarily just drove a borderline right through the middle of it. So much of history is far closer to us than we realize, never ceases to amaze me. Yeah, I mean, fact is stranger than fiction, definitely. And it is very close to us all. And Gabriel says, then there's J.J. Abrams with his green screen in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and
yeah, I know. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. But
yeah, no, I was just thinking, sorry,
go ahead.
Lebanon being carved off and that, but on my mother's side of the family, my grandparents and my grandfather came from Lebanon. Well, he was born in Australia.
Oh, right.
He had 10 siblings though. But yeah, they had to flee Lebanon because they were Catholic.
Yeah,
and they were going to get executed for not.
Well, there you go.
So.
Well, that's a similar story to
but that was
a lot of people.
But that was before this, because he was born in 1911 in Claremont. But so yeah, it was.
Yeah, well, this is it. And Lebanon was once held as this like wonderful example of how everybody can get on together.
Well, it was also a beautiful place before
it's a
all the
gorgeous
conflict
place.
And the war and stuff. It's like, what you see now is just like all bombed out.
Yeah, like Beirut was like the typical in the 1980s. Like Beirut was like the example of the worst hellhole on earth.
Yeah, but before that was beautiful. Like you see photos of like the hotels and stuff, and you go, "Wow, that looks like a great place to visit." And it's like, well, I mean, I don't know what it's like today, but
well, I mean, and Lebanon as a country, it's a very fertile place and lovely weather, and that's why it's fought over, because it's a nice place to with regards to the climate and the resources, and that's unfortunately why it's been fought over, and it's a very different place today, definitely. Jeff's even commented in the chat there. If it was left to J.J. Abrams, the entire conflict would be retconned and the Klingons would have won. Well, there you go.
But they wouldn't have looked like Klingons.
Kapla!
Kapla. My grandparents' place in the mountains of Lebanon is still, to me, the most beautiful place on earth, Guzmetti says. So that's interesting that there's some... you also have, obviously, go back through your family history there as well, Tony. Didn't know that. But yeah, going back to this movie, it was also a scene. One of the scene's film score was used in the film 1977 movie The Spy Who Loved Me. Also, it was Roger Moore, Sir Roger
It's
Moore's
my
favorite
favorite
movie.
James Bond movie of all time.
Yes, hello, my name's Sir Roger Moore. This is my favorite movie. Oh, yes.
Okay, Roger,
yeah.
look scared. Okay, Roger, look happy. Okay, Roger.
Roar.
It's
Two
the same
eyebrows on
freaking
one.
expression,
Roar.
Roger.
Roar.
I'd rag on Sir Roger Moore.
He's a
my
lovely
favorite
fella.
Bond.
I mean, he was a nice guy. I mean, he admitted himself he couldn't act. He just enjoyed doing what he did.
And his name was responsible for the greatest condom ad in history.
Yes.
Roger Moore.
This was almost Sharif's only Oscar-nominated performance, by the way.
That's
earlier,
criminal.
It got 7 Academy Awards, and
so he never got a nomination for Dr. Zhivago.
No, he didn't. This is
Didn't
the
even
only
get one for the 13th Warrior. Come on.
No, this is it. It's the only movie he was nominated for an Oscar.
He's good in everything.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Just going back to Dara, which is the town where he gets captured and tortured. That episode happened on the 20th of November, 1917. While he was in disguise, he was spying there, and he was captured by the Ottoman military. He says in his book that he was beaten and sexually assaulted by the local bey and the guardsman. He doesn't specify the nature of it, though.
I think we can figure that one out.
Yeah. But I mean, there's no independent testimony to actually say it actually happened, but he did write about it in his book.
Well, people of that day and age, they didn't really talk about that.
No,
but it's speculated that
if he said it most likely happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't admit to something like that if it didn't happen.
Well, this is it. I mean, people speculate that it must. The strong evidence to say that it did happen because it had a strong psychological effect on him in later life. His peculiar behavior, was partly attributed to that, and he does mention in his book 7 Pillars of Wisdom that in Dara that night the citadel of my integrity had been irrevocably lost. Can't speak tonight. The fall of Damascus, it very quickly just says basically that he was involved in the build-up to capture Damascus in the final weeks of the war, but not present at the city's formal surrender. He arrived several hours after the city had fallen. The first regiment arrived was the 10th Light Horse Regiment of the British there, so to accept the formal surrender of the acting governor Emir Said. But Lawrence was instrumental in establishing a provisional Arab government under Faisal in newly liberated Damascus, which he had envisioned as the capital of an Arab state. Faisal's rule ended just a mere 2 years later, end of 1920, the Battle of Maïsaloun. The French forces of General Henri Gouraud entered Damascus under the command of General Mariano Goibé, destroying Lawrence's dream of an independent Arabia. So the French just marched in the end of 1920 and just took it. But during the last years of the war, Lawrence had sought to convince the British government that Arab independence was in their best interests. But the Sykes-Picot agreement between France and Britain had already been settled and all been said and done. And that obviously frustrated any of the ideas that he did have. After the war, he returned to the United Kingdom as a full colonel and worked in the Foreign Office. He also attended the Paris Peace Conference between January and May as a member of Faisal's delegation. He was actually involved in a plane crash. He crashed at the airport of Roma Centocelle. The pilot and co-pilot were killed, but Lawrence survived with a broken shoulder blade, 2 broken ribs. So he was immortal, basically. He just kept surviving all of these weird. Some people think that might have been Yeah, I mean, I personally think that a bit suspicious that, but never mind. I mean, he survived it. He was visited by King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy while he was recovering in Italy at the hospital. There's a lot more information, but later on in his life, Lawrence served as an advisor to Winston Churchill at the Colonial Office. And apparently hated bureaucratic work as well. And also he went on to do several different things during the years. He went to work for the RAF, amongst others. I think he was involved in helping design ships or boats, I'm not sure. But he continued to serve in the RAF, based at RAF Mountbatten near Plymouth, and also Bridlington in Yorkshire. And obviously, as we see at the beginning of the movie, he had several Brough Superior motorbikes that he enjoyed riding. In late August or early September 31, he stayed with Lady Houston aboard her luxury yacht, the Liberty, off Calshot, shortly before the Schneider Trophy competition. And Lady Houston would ask Lawrence's advice on obtaining a new chauffeur for a Rolls-Royce car, and said, but forgive me, but you know everything. People used to ask his advice and everything because he was a very well read person. He was very, very, very bright. Interwar period, the RAF's Marine Craft Section air rescue launches capable of higher speeds and greater capacity. He was involved in those at the time, a British powerboat company. But keen motorcyclist, he owned 8 bikes, all the same model. And but it was May 13th, 1935, and he was fatally injured 2 months after he'd ended his military career, and he swerved to avoid hitting 2 boys on their bicycles over the dip of a hill and lost control, thrown over the handlebars. It was a head injury that he suffered, which killed him 6 days later on the 19th of May 1935 at the age of 46. Quite I mean, in one sense, obviously he swerved to avoid harming anybody else, but in another sense, it's the way he died was after he'd survived all of that.
To die in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah, something so silly. Yeah.
So it's a sad end, obviously. But there's a great amount of writing about him and conjecture, as well as his own written works. Like I say, he did his own translation of the Odyssey from original Greek, did it himself. There's a book called The Forest Giant, which I would recommend anybody who's interested in fantasy or myth to read that. But Lawrence did a translation of that into French, into English from the Old French. The 7 Pillars of Wisdom is the book that he wrote himself about the Arab Revolt, and a lot of what's in this movie comes from that. And there's a lot of debate about his personal psychology and sexuality as well. But ultimately, the legacy of the man is that he was a unique person who did incredible things. He regarded himself as an ordinary person, but a man who'd achieved a great deal in a short space of time, and was influential in so many areas of society, and influenced, obviously, directly the Middle East at that time. In regards to the movie, I believe this is the enduring classic that everybody thinks of when they think about the director David Lean. And I think the second movie they think of when they think of David Lean is Bridge Over the River Kwai, isn't it? So
yeah,
of the two, when people think about the this kind of cinema, which existed for a short period of time in the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s, this is what they think of. And David Lean, actually, as a director, had these successes in quick succession, but then had a really bad reception to one of the movies he did in, I think it was, it wasn't Ryan's Daughter. Was it Ryan's Daughter? I think it was. I think it was Ryan's Daughter, and the reception to it was really poor. So it really hit him, and he didn't do anything for a while. And then eventually, I think in 1984, he did Passage to India.
Passage to India, yeah.
And that's another amazing movie.
And Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Zhivago. So going back, I'll just quickly check. So we've got, here we go. So obviously he directed Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, Oliver Twist. Great Expectations was 1946, Oliver Twist 1948. I'd encourage anybody to see those movies, especially Great Expectations. The cinematography in there is incredible. And Bridge on the River Kwai was 57. And when you think how well that's made, it seems like it was made in the 60s because the technology and the quality of the image, and
it's beautiful.
It's incredible for being in 1957. So 5 years later, Lawrence of Arabia. 3 years after that, The Greatest Story Ever Told. I'm not my favorite. I would imagine it's like,
I didn't like that.
It wasn't. I wasn't. But Dr. Zhivago in 1965 as well. Obviously, incredible movie. Ryan's Daughter is a fantastic movie. It just wasn't received well at the time, and of course, Passage to India is incredible. And that was his renaissance. He came back and did that movie, and that was the last one he directed.
Well, the thing is Jennifer Lawrence paved the way for him. So.
Oh, absolutely,
She's amazing.
I mean, without her, where would we be?
I still haven't gotten sick of doing that. By the way,
yeah, that's good old. Yeah,
she does deserve it.
Yes, she does.
It's an interesting contrast, though, isn't it, between the actors who used to be and the actors who are now here, and
actors.
But isn't it amazing? Because there's always been divas, but back in the day, actors came from an actual working class background. A lot of them, some of them came from privileged backgrounds, but a lot of them were simple people who were grateful for their success instead of,
honestly, everyone should be always grateful for their success, regardless of what they're in. It's like whether they're an actor or a sports person or whatever. It's like you may have skills in that, but you're nothing without your fan base.
This is it, and the point is so poignant now, the way things have gone with cinema now and TV, that I don't know. I think we're rounding the corner, because I think there are some actors, like, let's make it current day, Henry Cavill, who has a great appreciation for the fans and the law. And I remember one interview he had where some interviewer was saying, but what about these toxic fans who just spoil it for everybody? And his answer was, there isn't really something like toxic fans. Fans are fans, and without the fans, you don't have your you don't have an audience without the fans.
And I mean, where does the word fan come from? Fanatic.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's like, some people are very, somber with the fanaticism with people, and some people are very passionate about it. And some people are crazy, but it's just how it is.
Exactly. And I think we're probably getting to, the reason we watch these movies is because we're looking back at a time when these films were made, and the reason these films were able to be made, and the reason they are so enduring, is because of the people who made them, and they had such a strong belief in what they were doing. And today, obviously, that is very much a rarity, but I think that things are changing, hopefully positively. The way things have got in the last 10 years, I think they have to die out, and then we can get something new.
Like, I don't have a problem with someone doing something for the paycheck. I have no problem with that. I mean, it's a job, and and when someone does that, and if it's a job, if it's a role that most people condemn, they're just doing it for the paycheck. It's not like they wrote it or directed it, or so I'm always a bit defensive of people when they go, "Oh, bloody Batman's going to be played by a Twilight guy." It's like, yeah, and it's like, it may not be good, it may be great. You never know. He just did Twilight for a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie that's held up as being one of the best movies of the last 3 or 4 years is The Batman. It's an okay movie. I enjoyed parts of it. It was overly long. You could cut 40 minutes out of it straight away, and I think that it was okay, but by today's standards, it's heralded as a work of art because it stands in amongst mediocrity.
Well, I've seen Patterson and a couple other things. One of them was that
Lighthouse.
God, I think it was King Henry. It was Was it
another one?
Forget the name of the
another one you're talking about. I can't remember.
The one with the Battle of Agincourt, and he played the Dauphin,
right.
whatever in the hell it's pronounced. And he did a fantastic job. He was such a prick and smug. I mean, he did a great job. The guy's got acting chops, and it's kind of sad that his all of his glory is pumped up in Twilight.
I know. Absolutely. Tony will be interested in this, Tony. In the movie, T. Lawrence and his Arabs are shown capturing Damascus. I did mention that it was British forces who captured the city first. I was wrong. There were Commonwealth forces. The city was captured by Australian troops 2 days earlier. So it was the Australians who captured Damascus.
I'm looking for bear.
Mate.
Going to Damascus, there's going to be bear there. Of course, that sounds
got me castle, mate.
It sounds like Boston.
Yeah.
Boston. Hey,
you've got to lengthen the A.
Tell you guys, it's Sam Adams in Syria. You're going to go right into Damascus.
Sam Adams. Something from the party platter.
Yeah.
So you don't say party, you say party.
Party platter.
And I bet you there's a few sodas over there, too.
Let's just use it. Well, it's the Irish influence because the Irish in Australia, Irish in Boston. So it's got to be some sort. I mean, most of the accents are like a mixture of West Country, Scottish, Irish, that kind of thing.
It's funny. It's funny saying that, but like World War One was just a meat grinder for Australia. Definitely, like Gallipoli was just an absolute cluster F.
Well, there's whole towns in the north of England, for instance. You know, these little towns and villages.
Yeah.
And there'll be a war memorial there. And you look at how many names, and there's literally towns and villages north of England, like coal mining towns or whatever.
It's like the entire
where just the entire town's population of young men wiped out completely. I mean, literally, like maybe one or two fellas came back. And, so my great grandfather was in the King's Own, and he would tell my nana stories about it, and he would romanticize it a bit because he didn't want to tell her the gory details. But horrible, one instance of there'd be somebody running to your left or right, and you'd look round and there'd just be the boots
gone
left.
Yeah.
And what he didn't say was obviously there'd be legs attached to those boots.
Yeah.
And how he came through it, I don't know, but I think
honestly, you wish it lived up to the name of the war that ends all wars.
Well, it's a war that started a whole lot of wars.
But you wish it lived up to that, and you go, no more wars after this. This is just too messed up.
Exactly.
It's like, but unfortunately,
I've missed a lot of chat here, by the way. Where are we here? Facts, Jeff Potts. Yeah. So, yeah, Tony. Gabrielle says a full life, even though it was cut short. Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
true.
I mean, he's one of those. Was it the stars that shines brightest?
The light
Burn
that
out the
burns,
I can't remember the
bright and
quotes
it
now.
burns as half as
But twice as hot. Yeah, job is job, but it's nice to be
and
appreciated.
you've burned so very bright, Roy.
Yeah. I think Ryan's Daughter is the only one of those movies I've not seen.
No,
I think I've seen
either.
it years ago. It is a good movie, definitely. It's a really good movie, but it must be at least 20 years ago for me. Last time I saw that, but it's definitely worth a watch. Absolutely worth a watch.
Yeah, I've seen all the twists. I've seen Great Expectations.
Great Expectations is a fantastic movie.
Yeah,
I mean, but I think in this movie, what we've seen is that David Lean, as a director, uses everything he can use to portray what he wants to say, and that's not just the landscape; it's the.
And that's why he's a great director, because everything's on the screen.
Show not tell.
Yeah.
And there's the only bit of exposition I think you get in the movie is there's a little bit at the start just to frame everything, but not much. It's in the conversation between the first general and T. Lawrence. And there's not a great deal of it. And then there's the conversation at the beginning of the second half where
just to catch you up.
Where you've got the journalist talking to Prince Faisal about what's currently going on now, militarily speaking, but there's not a great deal of it. It's done in a way where it's done really economically. So things are said that make sense later on in the movie, and so there's no fat on this movie at all. None. I would argue no fat on this movie. Even though it's quite a long movie.
There's nothing to cut out.
No. And that's why when Spiegel did this just arbitrary editing, it broke David Lean's heart, because it's like, what are you doing? And all the actors were the same. It was just like, where's this scene gone? Where's that scene gone?
Well, it's funny, like when you mentioned last time where they said they just nib. It was like, a little mouse would come along and
nibble through the whole thing.
So I just pull in random stuff, and I got to say that I just don't understand cutting stuff out of movies at all, because I don't have. If a movie's 3 hours and it's a good movie, I don't care. But James Cameron, when he used to direct good movies, sorry, I just don't care about Avatar. But when he had to edit Aliens and when he had to edit The Abyss, he just took out a subplot.
Yeah.
And he just said, so you can watch the theatrical release of both those films, and it makes perfect sense. But when you watch the special edition of both, you go, wow, this is so much better. I'm never watching the theatrical cut ever again, because I want this, because it has the full story.
Yeah.
So,
do you know that point you made in the first show a week ago, right? Where you said, I think it was either you or Tony said, how did they... Because you would see any footprints in the sand if they got it wrong.
Oh, yeah, they'd have a sweeper.
What did they do? Well, I found out what they did. When they were in the desert locations, after each rehearsal and after each take, they had 300 Bedouins wearing sandals that were muffled in wool, covered in wool. And their job was to go out and smooth out the desert sands with palm fronds, so that there would be no footprints visible in the sand. And they had to do that every time. Now they wonder why they run out of a budget, because we're paying 300 Bedouins.
Yeah, how many Bedouins you going to need?
It reminds me of that scene in Spaceballs where they're combing the desert. It's a giant comb. And then the African-American guys are using an Afro comb.
That is probably one of my favorite lines in the entire movie.
We're combing the desert.
And I love the fact that's Tim Russ, who plays Tuvok in Star Trek Voyager.
This is it. I think this... I mean, obviously, it's a satire of Star Wars, but I think there is a a Lawrence of Arabia joke in there as well somewhere.
Well, plus Dark Helmet's got like a pith helmet, and
yes, he has when he visits the desert
on the
planet.
desert, yeah.
Then he's got like a little visor that pops up because his helmet is so big.
Went over my helmet.
No, sir, I did not see you playing with your dolls.
But yeah, no, it that's fascinating though. The whole 300 Bedouins, because yeah, it's like, what did they do? They have like brooms or whatever, or But yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
but the fact that that level of attention, because obviously, you're going to see it, and it has to look immaculate. You have to completely believe that there was no camera crew. This just happened. We are seeing this as it's really happening, and it's because you can't shatter the effect. You can't break the effect. You can't break the fourth wall, and this movie never does break the fourth wall.
No.
So, then all of the trendy directors say, "Hey, let's break the fourth wall." No,
let's not say we did.
That's not, unless it's a comedy, where obviously in a comedy you do that thing. So yeah, I mean the loads of trivia on this movie, and there's lots we can say about the director, but overall, I'm looking at the accolades for this, and the
how many nominations did you say it got? Like 11?
Well, it won 7 Oscars, but it was nominated for. Let's have a look, because this is the sad thing. I mean, obviously he was up against some really incredible actors that year.
Oh yeah, no, that was a bad year for
yeah,
best actor.
Exactly. So it was nominated for, let's have a look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It would have been 11 nominations, but they forgot to post the nomination for costume design.
Oh.
So the lady who did all the costume design had no chance from the start. That was pretty unfair. But yeah, so 10 nominations for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Cinematography, Film Editing, Music Score, and Best Sound. So it won 7. Best Picture, Sam Spiegel. Best Director, David Lean. I think it was David Lean's second Oscar. Best Actor, Peter O'Toole was nominated, didn't win. Supporting Actor, Omar Sharif, nominated, didn't win. This is his only nomination. Screenplay was Robert Bolton, Michael Wilson, nominated, didn't win. Best Art Direction, including the fact it was Best Color Art Direction, John Box, John Stoll, and Dario Simoni won. Best Cinematography, Freddie Young. So when you think about all of the effects in the movie, people coming out of mirages and all of the fantastic cinematography, Freddie Young was responsible for that. He won an Oscar for that. Best film editing was Anne V. Coates. That was the original edit, not what Sam Spiegel did to it. Best music score, Maurice Jarre for the soundtrack, and best sound, John Cox. So seven Oscars altogether. I mean, cleaned up that year.
He really captured the essence of the camels.
And the Lulalulation as well.
Yes,
Lulalulation. But yeah, I mean, despite the movie's success, a lot of people have disliked it due to the fictional elements, because there's a lot of, like we said earlier, amalgam characters. But really, I think
that
those people who dislike it are, like historical Puritans who would like to see all of the characters represented. Obviously, you can't do that in cinema.
You can't always do that. Like, what was it recently? Chernobyl had amalgam characters in it, but it was still felt real.
Yep.
It's like
you can't please everybody, that's for sure. But
this is also Steven Spielberg's all-time favorite movie as well, by the way.
I can forgive stuff like that when the intent is correct. And that's. I mean, look, The Untouchables is not a historically accurate movie, but I still enjoy the hell out of it. So I give it a pass on its historical inaccuracies because I think it's a good film.
The family didn't like it. T. Lawrence's brother, Professor A.W. Lawrence, was horrified, and he said they'd taken liberties with history. He called it an unholy marriage between Western film and psychological horror, and he refused to let the title Seven Pillars of Wisdom be used, and he donated to charity most of the money he'd got from selling the rights to the book. So he wasn't happy with it. Yeah. But it's not historically accurate 100%. There are some liberties taken in there. But I think probably family will always be upset by things like this because they have their own opinion of someone. And
well, there are elements in the film where Lawrence doesn't come off as a very good person.
No, exactly.
So, but who does during war?
Well, that's it. By the way, the production wound down in Jordan. Omar Sharif and Peter O'Toole wanted to prepare themselves for their return to civilization. Having read the sudden popularity of the twist dance craze in the magazines that were being shipped over to them while they were in the desert, they flew in a teacher from Paris to give them lessons on how to do the twist in the evening. So there we go. So production dragged on for so long, however, that by the time they were back in England, the twist had fallen out of fashion by the time they got back. It took so long to make this movie. You can see how they easily went over budget because, goodness me, there's flying in dance instructors, 300 Bedouins with... I'm starting to sound like Monty Python. 300 Bedouins with palm fronds and woolly slippers. Are you having a laugh?
Imagine someone comes at you with a pointed stick. Shut up. All right, come at me with a banana.
Now you eat the banana. That's disarming him.
Hey, dear me. But yeah, I mean, like I say, we'll round things up in just a moment. Peter O'Toole's performance as T. Lawrence is the number one ranked performance of all time in Premiere Magazine's 100 greatest performance of all time.
The from Jennifer Lawrence. So
yeah, the Arabs referred to T. Lawrence as Orance and later El Orance. In Arabic, El or Al is the definite article equivalent to the in English. Many European names that begin with L sound as therefore a bridge. So when they heard the word Lawrence or L or L, or, basically they assumed that the beginning of it was the, therefore the name should be split into the L and Orance, the Orance, which is why they call them Orance. So that's why they call them Orance, because that's their understanding of how the word should be, how the name should be said. Peter O'Toole visited Bethlehem. He was unmoved by the experience at the time during the movie, calling it Christ commercialized. He's probably not wrong, because you know how things are, where they make money out of tourists.
You too can buy your Stations of the Cross.
But yeah, apparently Albert Finney's screen tests in Arab costume as T. Lawrence are the most requested viewing item in Britain's National Film Archive. So people want to see Albert Finney's. If this is the thing that AI is going to do, isn't it? Because let's see what Lawrence Arabia would look like if Albert Finney played the role. And AI will do it for you. You know, they can just use that footage and sort of copy the style of it and put it onto the movie.
Just use Peter Cushing from Rogue One.
Yeah, you could do that as well. I know. Oh, that was in the back in the day when they couldn't get it right. It looks
so shiny.
Horrific. It looks horrific, doesn't it?
I'm so shiny.
Yeah,
so shiny and new.
I know. Just didn't work.
The guy doing the voice nailed it.
Yeah, the guy in the voice was good, but it was just what the technology just wasn't
And
there.
he
when
wasn't
the-
wearing slippers, so it was like inaccurate.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the touch that didn't have the fact that he's walking around wearing slippers, and he used to love painting minis as well. By the way, Peter Cushing.
Really?
Yeah,
He could join Henry Cavill in his Warhammer.
I was going to say if he was alive today, he'd probably be a 40k fan. Because like I remember seeing Henry Cavill being mocked by Graham Norton, and I felt like saying, "Well, Graham, if you realise that there's actually a tradition of actors who painted miniatures and were into wargaming and things like that. It's not just Henry Cavill. The famous Peter Cushing, he was big into that stuff.
Peter Cushing lives in Winstable.
Yeah. So anyway, tying everything up tonight, I believe overall, there's far too much more trivia to go through, but overall, the movie's one of those movies that it not only is it enduring because it's so well done, but it's also one of those movies that you can go back to and watch over and over again and get something different out of it. And as I've watched this like 2 or 3 times over the past couple of weeks, you keep getting something more out of it each time you watch it. And it wasn't immediately obvious at first, but the two halves of the movie are completely different. And that's another element of depth to the movie.
Which is really good.
It honestly only gets better. The more times you watch it, it just keeps getting better, in my opinion. Just going back quickly to the chat here. Facts, and Gabrielle says he was well acted, though. Yes, indeed. And so once again, we thank everybody who joined us tonight, and especially to Cosmetti and Gabrielle for joining us in the chat, and also appreciate everybody who'll join later watching this recorded, and obviously my most deepest appreciation to of course Cosmetti and Gabrielle, but also Jeff and Tony for joining as co-hosts tonight, and wherever Ralph has got to in the desert sands of Texas, we hope that he's all right, and our best wishes to him.
I'm sure he found he found a bottle of whiskey out there.
I'm sure he found a bottle of whiskey and is toasting Santa a week early.
Stars at night are big and bright deep in the heart of Texas.
Yep, they are. Absolutely. So once again, thank you everybody. A tremendous movie, and such a poignant movie, and also, even today, it's right up to current day. It's relevant, not just as a work of cinema, but also for its content and where we are in today's world. So a joy to watch. And very quickly, Cosmetti is pimping Tony's channel. So there's a link to Tony's channel, and I think we need a link to Jeff's channel.
Jeff's
as well.
Is right above mine.
There we go, and there's Jeff's channel. So don't forget that Jeff has a book out at the moment, and it's available.
And he will have another book out on March 3rd.
Yes, so The Revenant of the Tomb is the book that's currently out, and that's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and where else is it available?
Yeah, pretty much everywhere.
I need to do a quote for you on your page too, because I really enjoyed your book.
Thanks.
Yeah, and there's another one coming out in March, which is called
The Wizard Stone.
There we go, and that'll be available in March. And Tony used to own a comic book store, but currently
technically I still do.
Yeah, it's an online store.
An official company.
I don't know whether do you want to plug the name of the store, Tony?
Comic Empire.
Comic Empire. And what's the URL for that?
Oh, we can't really have one at the moment. I mainly use we have an eBay store, and that's mainly how I'm doing stuff. Plus, we operate through what's that thing called? Facebook.
Yes.
While it's still around, and
while it's still around for the time being,
the lizard man still has some billions left.
Yeah. So here we go. So once again, thanks to Cosmetti and Gabrielle, and thanks to the show, says Cosmetti. Good night, friends, says Gabrielle. Thank you for sticking around this long. because once again, I made everything far too late again. Good night, Gabrielle. Good night, Cosmetti. And good night, John Boy. I said it this time, Tony. Oh, it's either you or Jeff usually says that. But once again, thanks to everybody. Had a fantastic time. And
Yeah,
I
great
fully
movie.
recommend this movie. Please watch it if you haven't already
Absolutely.
watched it. And obviously, for anybody who's watched this along with us, if you've just listened to us chat, go and watch the movie on your own without us blathering through it. But we appreciate everybody who stopped by to listen to
Absolutely.
us.
I do throw
talking
the
about
word
it.
epic around a lot, but this movie really does
Yeah,
live up to that title.
It is
epic.
truly an epic movie, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we wish you a very good night. I don't think we're going to be back before Christmas on this channel, so I obviously wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. And to everyone, good night.
God bless
Good
us,
night.
everyone.
Thanks, Tiny Jeff.